Intuition is a voice within us that can get stronger. It starts as a whisper, but when we listen to it, it gets stronger. It can come through also a sense of our bodies when they constrict, or words, or an emotion, an actual feeling, an emotion that comes through. But it's really about listening.
Welcome to the Lara Jane Layton Show. This podcast is for you, the person who keeps putting others first. Your self-talk has held you back. You no longer need to take a second seat. Let's explore ways to overcome self-doubt. You can silence that inner bully voice and achieve your full potential. Here's your host, Lara Jane.
Welcome back to the show. I am so excited to have a new best friend with me today. Katherine is here, and we're going to talk about that old thing we always talk about, self-care and putting yourself first. But we're going to talk about a topic that I don't know if I've heard before, and she calls it wakefulness. And I know other people call it that too. But what is wakefulness, and how can this help us be better at that self-compassion and that self-care? So Katherine, first help me understand what is wakefulness, and then help us to be more compassionate with ourselves.
Well, Laura, it is wonderful to sit with you and wonderful to speak to this. I believe so deeply in what I'll define as wakefulness in my own life, and kind of supporting others and myself included to be on kind of a path. So wakefulness is, in my definition, living life as our most conscious self, kind of not walking around in a trance, not being asleep, not literally asleep, obviously, but kind of in this numb, autopilot-y kind of way. That's the opposite of wakefulness. So,
Oh, I've been there before. I call it my robot stage, where I
you,
just mechanically went through life.
yes, and you aren't alone. And that is even adaptive in a certain way, but quite consequential. We have a limited amount of time in this human body, and for whatever our journey will be. So the idea of being awake is a different life that we live. But it is not just a word and a definition, and I could take a pill and all of a sudden I'm wakeful. It is a practice and a process. And for people with their relationship with themselves, often some healing involved in order to live in that kind of wakeful state with oneself. So, yeah, that's how I would introduce it as a concept. People get wake up calls. Maybe this will be a wake up call.
I
Uh,
like it.
yeah, yeah,
And it's a good thing we wake up slowly, because going from totally asleep at midnight in the dark to noon is a big change. And it's like, oh, let me get used to a little bit of light, a little
yeah,
bit more light.
exactly. Well, if we can think about doing anything quickly, well, that sounds really tempting, and we can be in this like, oh my gosh, it could just be, oh, I don't know, going to a couples retreat, and all of a sudden my relationship is completely transformed after 3 days, or just taking a medication or do something dramatic and quickly losing a lot of weight, or something where there's a feeling of a dramatic experience. But the reality, Laura, is we haven't actually built the brain to support the sustaining of that choice. So, because change, we're all kind of a bunch of chemicals in neurology. So, if we don't, I'll use that couples retreat idea or a personal retreat idea. If you don't change your brain, meaning integrate what you learned in those 2 to 3 days, then basically our brains are neurologically, there's an incentive for them to go back. It's called the default mode network, basically to go back to the way things were. Like you said, that numb, walking around robotic state. It's weird because it feels so good to not be there, but it's actually really efficient for the brain to just keep it familiar and kind of small. And so we have to really commit to being wakeful, to being conscious with ourselves in a way the rest of our lives. That's why I call it a path, because we don't ever want to get off the path. Even if we slip, we get back on the path. And that is more than changing or growing a new brain and maintaining that more expanded way of being. Does this make sense?
Yeah, well, yes, but I was just going to ask you, how do I start waking up? If
Mm.
if I just feel like I'm going through the motions because I have so much on my plate, I don't have time to experience. How do I start waking
Mm.
up? What
I
do you do?
It's a great question, and what I would say is, so much is about in the context of self-compassion and taking care of ourselves, our focus today, having a relationship with oneself. So for many of us, our relationship with ourselves has either been non-existent, meaning I'm just so focused on my outer world, doing and thinking and running around, or my relationship with myself is negative. So, I like the word befriending you. So it just starts with beginning a friendship with ourselves. And like any friendship, like you and I, because we're best friends today, I might think about giving myself the benefit of the doubt if I have tried really hard and I'm disappointed. I might forgive myself for something I've done that I feel guilty for. I want to create an inner world where my own company is a felt sense of kindness and presence and love. So that's where what we have to start with is ourselves. And so that's my first step is just to identify what do you have a relationship with yourself and is it negative or positive? And then once we have that answer, we can start to build out from that place. That includes doing things for ourselves, but it could even start with, oh my gosh, I cut somebody off on the freeway on my way to work. Now, what am I going to say to myself about that? Do I truly get to be human or is that just somebody else? I offer that kind of grace to somebody else.
I think it's really important. And that's really the whole idea behind silencing that bully and becoming your own best friend. Because until we can treat ourselves as well as we treat our friends, we're not going to progress as much or as fast. And it's giving myself that 2 seconds of grace. Oh shit, I just burnt the casserole. What's for dinner now? Like
That's right.
it's okay. I can DoorDash. Thank God for these new Insta things that come.
Exactly. Exactly. And the interesting thing is if when we're around people that are unkind to themselves, it doesn't feel good. So one motivation is even your energy, much less what you might say under your breath, right? Burning that casserole. Are your kids hearing that? That kind of self beating ourselves up is am I just crabby because of what I just said to myself? So they're experiencing that at the dinner table. Like it, we aren't an island. So even our own internal process with ourselves actually makes its way out to the you know, energetically to others. So again, if it's like, well, but what motivates some of us or for some time is really thinking about other people, even being kind to ourselves. There is a kindness to others in being kind to ourselves, I guess is the point I'm making. Yeah. Yeah.
I know that as I started to learn to be more gracious with myself, it naturally added to how I was more gracious with other people. Of like, maybe they're just having a bad day and I don't need to make it worse or I don't need to take this personally. Because a lot of times, somebody approaching me where I felt attacked, I would take very personally. And I've learned to turn it around and be more compassionate to that person instead of going, I'm bad. It's they must be having a bad day. And just not taking things personally, which is not that easy all the time.
Not that easy. Well, there's lots there to unpack potentially, but there's this idea that correlation, things move. Like if I judge myself, I'm likely to judge others versus if I have compassion toward myself, my brain will see with the eyes of compassion. So, however, we kind of internally treat ourselves, even like if I can let myself have my emotions and have kind of a deeper sense of empathy about my emotional distress or vulnerabilities, I am going to lead with more easy empathy toward others. The brain so it goes in both directions. So I like to say love moves in all directions. It doesn't have to, it's not narcissism to love ourselves. Love also wants to move out. But there is a beauty when we package it all together, and understand how interconnected it all is. And then to your point, it is very hard to change for what for some people started early in their life. This is not news to them. It didn't start at 25 or 39 that I started being unkind to myself or having that bully or that harsh inner critic is another phrase for it. And where I like to go is that where is this ultimately coming from? And for many people, it's about a core belief that got confused along the way. Like, I don't know that I'm worthy. It's a worthiness piece. And so when I don't feel worthy, I have to prove myself every day. I'm going to be perfectionistic. I'm going to have anxiety. I'm going to beat myself up easily because I have to prove myself every day because at the core level, I don't know that I'm good enough. But if I could start the day in the shower remembering I am good, I am lovable, I am worthy, then that kind of gets ahead of that criticalness. And to your earlier word and mine, allows us to have more grace. We get to be human because we're not trying to basically be perfect to prove our worth.
The other thing that's helped me is to realize not everybody wants to go the same place I want to go or be the same person I want to be, and to not expect them to follow my rules and the way I do things. And so many times people influence others to be more like them because they think that's right or that's familiar. And whatever it is, it's okay. I really push hard. It's okay to learn who you are and to be you. It's not bad. You don't have to be like everybody else.
Yeah, there's a way in which, as we're young, but certainly that we can take this to our grave, that people look for validation from others, and that puts a kind of pressure. It's where people don't disagree easily because, or say, I don't know, somebody decides that they want to have a little alcohol in their life, and somebody else, a friend, you and I are best friends. Now I've decided I'm not going to drink. Well, if you need my validation, you're going to be uncomfortable with my choice because you have needed my choice to feel self supporting of your own, to feel like yours is the right choice. So it's a big deal for people to be able to really stand kind of true to themselves and sometimes be alone in a choice that they're making that is good and right for them. I like to propose the idea of diversity for all of us. That's not the traditional kind of diversity of race, and nationality and ethnicity, but diversity of being, diversity of ways of being, diversity of perspective. And our human brain just doesn't always do that very well because we have this need for validation. So that's a really powerful part of our loving ourselves work, is to just know that it just stands with us, whether it's replicated out in the world or not, whatever the this is, an opinion, a choice, yeah, a way of being.
It's nice that you say that also, because I usually tell my guests this is an inclusive podcast. And
Mm,
people immediately go to gender or race or anything. And I go, it's your path. We all have our
mhm.
own path. We all have our own way. I like the scenic route. You might like the freeway. We're all going somewhere else. I might be going to Chicago. You might be going to New York. It doesn't matter. We allow people on their path where they want to go and how fast they want to go and support them. And so that's, it sounds like the same idea you have with that inclusiveness.
And if we can be really solid with our own selves and on that path, as you were both describing, it lends itself to a kind of curiosity. Because I don't need you to make my choices, Laura, and you don't need me to really be clear about your choices. So then we can just be curious, and that's one of the best relationship practices we can have. I also always circle it back to, and can we be curious with ourselves? Like, oh, there's my harsh inner critic. I wonder why she's showing up today. I wonder what that's about, right? When we can be curious, we can find answers, and with answers, information is power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my common emotion that I always go, okay, Miss Testy's coming out again.
Yeah, right, right,
Like, "Rah."
right. Well, and I work from an idea of parts, and it's really helped me because I have certainly been unconscious in my life. And then that part of me, that part that competed, or that part that um, just was unkind or unthoughtful, I wanted to annihilate those parts. I didn't want them to be me. What we can know, this is science, not just psychotherapy, is that if we try to reject a part, it just goes underground. And so to have an idea that it's called shadow work too, there are parts of us that can be unconscious.
Mhm.
Certainly we see this in the world, right? It might be the driver ahead of us. Um, but but having a different kind, so befriending you, what I said earlier, that phrase is actually a way of befriending the parts. But here's the trick. You take the car keys away from those parts. So I can have a part of me that can I don't know, be judgy, or that could be whatever. I had some trauma in my childhood, so different things would come through these young injured parts. I can love those parts to help them heal and actually have them no longer control. So I used to have a temper, and that would be a part of me was in touch with my anger. That's not a problem. But when I was raging at others, that's a problem. That's actually a problem. So it's like, instead of feeling shame around that part, it is about thinking, oh, where's this coming from? That curiosity. And it's actually some very young rage about some things that happened that weren't my fault, that's how it felt to me. And as I put my arm around that part, she heals. But again, she does not get to be in the relational space having other people feel mistreated or scared. And my temper was really strong, was pretty fierce. I mean, I never shot anybody or did anything that dramatic, but it was intense. And so I think that's part of self-compassion, is understanding we have parts that have potentially been badly behaved, but they come from somewhere. And as we understand those parts, almost all parts, if not all, have a good intention, which is kind of wild. Like, what good intention would a harsh inner critic have, a bully have? Well, if we don't know we're good enough, it's there every day knowing you better do it right, Catherine, because we don't know that we're worthy, and we have 12 hours to prove our worth. Right? So it's trying to help me feel worthy, but how it does it is it beats me up all the time, and it's constantly pressuring me to be perfect. That's the idea of parts, which is so beautiful, rather than just one perfect self. And then these parts are kind of coming in at the most inconvenient time.
Talking about your anger, and I was thinking, there's times where the people who I interacted with that one time make I'm the biggest bitch in the world, or the other people that know you know
Yeah.
that that doesn't happen. And so we put off different parts of us. We let people see different parts. And I was thinking back when my oldest son was he right? Yeah, that one. That it doesn't matter to anybody, but my brain had a fart. Anyway, he I was sending him to his room. He refused to go to his room. And instead of, those conversations where initially they start out as you need some time alone, and then all of a sudden it's who's the strongest and who's the meanest, it
Mhm.
it just escalates and escalates. I'm sitting here trying to carry him to his room, and he is way stronger than me. This 10-year-old kid could have, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was unable, and I finally, you have that snap of, "What am I doing?" I
Right.
now this is a fight of wills that should have never ever got there, and I
Yes.
remember turning around, sitting down on the stairs, and saying, I just treated you like nobody in the world should ever be treated. I am sorry. Can you sit here and forgive me? And you don't have to go to your room until you're ready. And we just kind of stopped it at that. But
Oh,
it's when you find those moments
it is.
when you're not being true to you,
Yes.
what do you do? Do you
Well,
go,
that
yeah,
yeah, and that is wakefulness right there. It is not to never be asleep again. Again, that's a perfectionistic, that's almost magical thinking. But to be our most conscious self is to know things like our worth, our lovability, so that when we are fallible, like you with your son on the stairs, you'd done enough growth, maybe, Laura, so that in that moment, something could wake up inside you and go, this is not right. I am out of integrity with in this relationship, with attuning to this child and maybe how this child is feeling, either angry or scared, and I'm not being my most my truest self, my most conscious self. Well, that was a wake up call moment, and that so it's really getting comfortable with we will go to sleep and then we will wake up. And it's in that inflection point that we could do something different and go a new way. And then that becomes a neural pathway that is truly a new way of being over time. If we continue to reinforce those new um, practices and relationship kind of ways of being. So and then it's self-forgiveness, as you asked him, we wanna not carry a lot of baggage from the past because that actually is like a weight, over and over. Yeah, the many, many moments of regret and guilt. So I another thing to offer is get current with yourself. If you have an inventory of something that you've done to another, then let's make amend. Let's do the repair work. If that is unwise or if they would not consent to that, make that available like a standing invitation. But today, in this moment, forgive yourself. Just learn by it. Don't, yell at your kid anymore if it's you and I. Take a parenting class. Something, but that kind of living in a more light kind of present, that's actually mindfulness then. That's huge in terms of kind of how we exist in our bodies and how we then find ourselves taking care of ourselves and talking to ourselves, that kind of thing. If I'm not lost in the past.
I just think it's really important for our friends to realize it's okay, lose your temper, but it's not okay to stay there and to find that path
Mhm.
back. We cross the lines, but we also need to learn to U-turn. And how do we give ourselves the grace? Because once you start down that road, to stop can be a little bit embarrassing. Like, oh, I just realized I was doing something stupid, but it's okay. And it's
That's
that's that grace part that we want is giving yourself that self-compassion of, okay, I'm not feeling authentic right now. Let's make a change.
Let's make a change. And when we offer, that really sincere remorse and apology, and again, not shame based, but guilt and regret are helpful emotions because they help us to wake up. When we notice it, which is that wake up wakefulness, when we own it, which is about not being in our egos and knowing that I get to be human, I get to have grace. So then I own it beyond forgiving oneself and giving ourselves grace. When we apologize, there's such a connection to other people and it just feels good.
Okay.
When you were sitting on the stairs and you just said, I'm sorry, how that feels for us to connect with others at that level. And certainly then they make mistakes and they would be more likely to apologize. And,
I think that's the big thing. When people understand that you give yourself the grace to turn around or change. Like, even when I say those limiting words like never, I go, wait, that's not right. It's not never. You can pull yourself around and you can change. And when you can give yourself the grace, other people feel like it's okay. So I publicly do it nowadays like, oh, wait, I didn't mean that.
well, it's so freeing, isn't it, to not be, to be able to not get it right and then to just visibly, like you say, do that U-turn. And it creates a sense of safety with others. When we are our most humble and human, is a path to connection. So as it's also then a practice of self-compassion to be aware and then forgiving of oneself, it does a lot of good in the world, I guess we might say.
Catherine, I love everything you're saying, and it's so in line with the way I feel. And not that everybody has to feel like me or you. It's we all have our chance to learn our own path. But I'd
Mm.
like to take a quick break, get a word from our sponsor, and when we come back, how do we now turn this into self-care? We're being gracious, we're being kind. What does self-care look like at this point? So we'll be right back. Hey, since I rarely have openings in my coaching schedule, I have a new resource out there on my website. It is called the BFF Coaching Network. And I have offered a spot there for any coach that has been on this show to list their coaching. You can go out there, you can listen to their episodes, you can feel a little bit about them, and then choose a coach that will work for you. So LauraJaneLayton.com, the BFF Coaching Network. Okay, Catherine, help me understand self-care because I do, I preach it from the inside out, until I've taken care of my thoughts and my ability to be mobile and stuff that I don't care how pretty you are, it's not going to work. And so that's my idea of self-care, but you still have to do all the things that make you feel special.
Hmm. Well, what I would say is self-care in a number of different levels. And Laura, you already said you really started from a great place because often when people, in my experience, and me too, used to think of self-care, it was like, do I get a massage? It's a lot of the shoulds. This is what I should be doing for myself, but I don't, or I don't have time. Um, so so if we start from the inside out, which is how we speak to ourselves, and even to your point, challenging some of our thoughts because it's pretty now I feel like people in our world understand this because it's been out in the public arena for a long time that we don't have to own our thoughts and don't let our thoughts own us. Much of what we think is actually inaccurate. It doesn't mean our thoughts are bad, but to be conclusive. And certainly if we make choices on our thoughts, that's just wildly frightening. So to have a kind of be the castle, have a thought, have it have to go over the moat. The moat is the like vetting process of like, okay, thought, I see you. You may or may not be true, but having a pause, I think that's kind of a huge place of self care is an inner pause to not be at the mercy of our mind. Then mindlessness in a way, but not be the absence of mind, but just being lost in that trance state. Secondly, from an inner self care kind of place, inner world, I would say feel your emotions. A lot of people in that numbness, non-awakeness are disassociated. That's just the clinical word for not feeling emotions. Now, disassociation is adaptive. We do want humans to be able to dissociate, especially children, because sometimes what we're experiencing is just too much. But the
Mhm.
problem is then we start disassociating all the time around lots of the feelings. Or, for example, I'll start to feel sad and then I'll think, why am I sad? Well, I just went back into my brain and I stopped the process of the emotion actually moving through me. Emotions are quite transient. They live in the body, they move through, and then they're done in waves, seconds, if not minutes, but not hours, not days. So, emotional health is actually returning to feeling our feelings in our bodies, not overthinking our feelings and then once we feel them, often we know what we need in a very organic way. So that's a self-care piece is just to give myself all my feelings, not just to be challenging my thoughts and to really know these core beliefs. I am lovable, I belong, and I am worthy. So those are the three inner pieces, our beliefs, our emotions, and vetting our thoughts. Then it does become kind of making time and for some symbolic like generosity towards self. And maybe for somebody, generosity is too strong a word. They're just going to give themselves a little bit of the stick, but not a lot of the stick. All right. However, wherever you start, the idea would be it matters that if you're not taking care of yourself, you're neglecting yourself. It's not just not taking care of yourself, you're neglecting yourself, and that is consequential. So, finding one thing, maybe it's getting yourself your favorite kind of tea, because that's one thing you do every day, or coffee. Maybe it's sitting at a stoplight and just taking some breaths, not thinking, how fast am I going to get there and what do I need to do when I arrive at my job? It can be so small, being thoughtful about water, but maybe it's just 2 more minutes in a warm shower where you just get to be. Certainly, it could include exercise that you love or going to your favorite movie. I love movies around the holidays because the Oscars around and
Yes.
New Year, and so there's some good stuff out there. It could be getting body work, but it's coming from this inside out practice of loving yourself rather than so the self-care is because I care about myself and I'm having the experience of loving myself in it. I'm not just signing up for a massage and showing up and paying my $120. There needs to be a relational component to the activity itself.
Right, and just because John Doe loves massages and you can like what you like. Well, my
Yeah,
husband loves to go get massages and I don't want to.
yeah,
So, like, what is it that works for
yeah,
you? And let it
exactly.
be. It's
Yes.
like, okay.
Yeah, well, and lately what's been compelling to me, and these are like 40, 50-year-old people that I sit with, like, they game. It's like, you game, because to me, gaming is like, I'm old school with it. It's like, I don't relate and it's violent. I'm pretty not into violence. It's not at all what gaming is anymore. It's like this whole world. They have these music tracks where now those people get awards at the music shows. And it's like, there's this whole other thing that could be, that's it. That's what really resonates for me. I think
Yes.
you make a great point of not having it be like, this is what's politically correct, or this is what people would, gets on the good list of self-care activities. It's whatever feels nourishing.
Yes. And sometimes that's just sit back on the couch. Sometimes it's take a nap. Sometimes it's go out for ice cream. What is it that makes that emotion and you connect? Because we have a body, we have a mind, and we have all these emotions. And when they're in sync, it feels so good.
Yeah. Well, and I would say a practice, and I put it also in some of my work around wakefulness, is just slowing down. So say you have dogs. I'm a dog person too. Every day I connect with my dog's named Nala. But there's a practice called savoring practice, and it comes from polyvagal theory, but it's a beautiful practice. And neurologically, if we spend just like 30 more seconds at something, and don't distract yourself, like don't just pet and then be thinking about something else, but actually just really be, and whatever you're savoring, something shifts. And there's like some magic threshold that if you go beyond that, it really deepens the experience. And we're not talking 3 more minutes, it's 30 more seconds sometimes. So savoring practice is a self-care practice. And that's really grounding for the nervous system too. So I always cuddle with my dog in the morning. But when I started my savoring practice, I could feel something different. I actually could feel it in my body. She loved it because I was really that much more present with her. But like you say, when we're all in sync, which is actually a nervous system reality, there's nothing better than those moments.
Yeah, it makes me think of those times where you just want one more second. So it's like two more deep breaths. Gonna enjoy this moment for two more deep breaths. And
Yeah,
it's just like, it's so peaceful.
yeah,
My
exactly.
favorite is clouds. And when I'm outside, it's like looking up at, oh, they're always spectacular. And it's just like, what beauty we have here on this earth. It's just, wow.
Well, and whether it's you go on vacation, so all of a sudden you're kind of actually just present, you're out of the thinking, doing, productivity mode of life. we can bring that every day, and that kind of sense of awe and that sense of kind of seeing from a more expanded place. And that is wakefulness. But all these other things, Laura, we've been talking about groom our ability, not idea, the ability for us to be in the present moment. Forgive stuff from the past. Clean up your relationships. Don't be lost in your thinking. Make sure you're not numb to your emotions. All those things then are like, when I take those breaths, I'm nowhere else. It's a free and clear kind of space. And that's a pretty amazing way to live in what can be for many, often enough, a very hard life at times. But beauty is always existing concurrent to all the other hard stuff going on. So it's so critical that we can tap into it, that we can directly experience it.
You have any idea or a practice? I do the breaths. Do you have another way of just really absorbing that whole experience? It's that one more minute with your special friend or your dog or
Mhm.
even your solitude. You
Mhm.
know, how can, besides just a couple breaths, which I do, are there other ideas?
Well, I do this myself every day, and I do it with my first sip of coffee because I do coffee every day. And so part of something being successful is finding a way to have it really like every day you brush your teeth because you never think, I'm not going to brush my teeth. So having something be kind of at that level of non negotiable. So my little mindfulness practice is more than just mindfulness. And it takes a minute or two. I will close my eyes. I will take those deep breaths, but I will usually have my hand on my chest. And as I breathe deeply, I invite myself to be fully in my body. So it's not just like, oh, the breath is happening separate from my body. And when I do that, I feel myself sink. Even though it's early in the morning, I still experience a change, and I go like, now I'm fully in my body. And then I do another piece and I say the words, I am with you to myself. I start the day from a sense of being relaxed and the kind of a moment just to be where my mind, there's nothing to do, I'm not solving a problem, making a plan, but I'm especially in a company met with myself. So it just takes a minute. You just close your eyes, you breathe deeply, you say, I'm going to be fully just here in this moment and in this body, and I'm going to be with myself. And the withness, there's a term withness, is profound for some people because it's not just, oh, I like myself and I'm going to say nice things to myself. It's, Catherine, I am with you. I am with you. And for some people, because of childhood things that happen to them, no one's been with them and they have never known to be with themselves. So it's an idea of accompaniment. And I'm with Catherine even when I'm mad at Catherine. And I'm with Catherine even when she makes mistakes. And I'm going to be with Catherine on her final breath, which is really comforting in terms of death. It's big. So that's little practice, I think throws a very wide net. Um, and for me helps go beyond just kind of having calm to having connection with myself.
I love adding the I am with you, but
Mm,
because it is that moment to savor that wholeness,
mhm,
and you are with you. Now
mm,
let's do it consciously. Oh,
mhm. Well, exactly. Yes. It's like, but of course I'm with me. It's like, actually, because I will feel it. And you know what I do, Laura? If I don't feel it, the connection, it's like a ding, like a little gong. I will do it again. Because I can go through, because I do it every day. And I even do it with some of the people I work with. They love this little ritual. So we'll start this way. But when I do it with myself, if I don't feel it, no, then I know it's just kind of checking boxes. So that's the other thing about practice is if we do something so consistently, are we starting to check a box? And so it's really important to keep it fresh. It's really important to keep it alive. If you meditate every day, if you do yoga every day, if you call a friend, it's a kind of presence with it that we need to be intentional about.
I love the idea of becoming more awake. I really, I hadn't used it or heard someone use this wakeful
Mhm.
word before, and I'm loving it because
Mhm.
we all talk about the awakening. Yeah, and I shouldn't say all. A lot of us woo-woo-ish people like to talk about the awakening. And I've always said, I wasn't asleep yesterday. I'm just more awake today, because it's just bits at a time and learning and experiencing. And, we change and allowing ourselves to change. I love that we can embrace our uniqueness and become awake to it because we've been so programmed through the years to act and do and be a certain way. I can come home and I can get really angry that all the drawers are left open, or I can say, who made the rules? They needed to be shut in the first place. Well, let
Mhm.
me just go shut them. It's not a big deal. And when can you take and say, who made this rule? And
Yeah.
why does everybody have to follow it? And you can start allowing other people to be themselves. And I think what a breath of fresh air to
Yeah.
have real people around you
Yeah.
that are who they are.
Well, and because this kind of a state of wakefulness, and I'm very much appreciating you putting the word process. It's a process. This is not a test. We are in the human school, as some would say. Some of us would say spiritual beings in a human experience. Uh, you know, to continue to experience next level and next level iterations of wakefulness. And one annoyance I've had of late in our American culture is the word woke got kind of hijacked by a political well, both at this point, which that was never the intention of how I've ever used it. It is much more about conscious living and conscious loving, including loving ourselves. So, and also that our circumstances, this isn't wakefulness despite what's going on. It's actually through what's going on. That the hardest of times sometimes will evoke a part of us that needs to heal, a pattern that we learn from somewhere else that we get to break. And so this isn't some kind of feel good experience, which is really wonderful to think it's right in the middle of adversity that we can find kind of that flower come up in the cement, that there is something else here. And that is the opportunity to be wakeful. And if we listen closely, if we're quiet enough, often we get a pretty strong read, like intuitively, on what needs to happen. You did with your son on the stairs, like, boom, you heard the voice, like, stop, enough. We have to go forward a new way. And then it changes. And so intuition ends up being a really big part of this process too, so that we can, in whatever moment we're in, with we're not petting our dogs and just blissing out on savoring dogness and dog love, that we're also still putting the wakefulness to the test of our day to day living, the commute on the way home, the difficult marriage we might be having, adolescent moodiness, fill in the blank, political hardship for many people. That's to me the real test. It's not going away somewhere and having this experience of wakefulness. If we can do it within our lives, our messy, imperfect human self and lives, then we're really onto something.
I really think that your message has been perfect for
Mm,
today. It's just learning to tune in to who you are, your thoughts, your mind, and becoming aware, aware of what's going on. When am I not being true to myself? When am I expecting someone else to live my dream?
mhm,
And, like, how do I give that beautifulness that I want to give myself to everybody?
mm, mhm.
And, giving yourself that opportunity to do it. So, Catherine, I was wondering, I would love you to share who you are, all the things about you. The information about you is in the show notes, but let's go ahead and share it. And then, what one thing could I do today to be more aware of my state of wakefulness?
Hmm. Oh, there's so many one things, but I appreciate that. I guess because we landed on it, I'm going to trust that my own intuition, and I'm going to say intuition. Intuition is a voice within us that is can get stronger. It starts as a whisper, but when we listen to it, it gets stronger. And it can come through also a sense of our bodies when they constrict, or words, or an emotion, an actual feeling, an emotion that comes through. But it's really about listening. So today, listen to yourself, and so cherish this thing called our intuition that is our guide. It is our guide to where we have been at odds with ourselves, and how we can practice self compassion today, where we are patterned and at odds and not living as our true, most conscious self. So it's kind of the everything button, gets us to all the places, I would say. So listen to your intuition. I'm going to add another thing. Try some version of mindfulness, like my little practice every day. Try it for a few days and see if you don't see a shift. And if those days feel like different days, because you start from a connection with yourself and a witness with yourself. You don't have to earn that. You don't have to wait till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a starting place. So just a little bit of, I don't know if you want any personal history, or just I'm practicing in Portland, Oregon right now. This is second career. What would be helpful to you?
Whatever your intuition wants to share with our friend.
Mhm. Okay. I started I had a lovely family and beautiful parents and some trauma within my childhood. So, and I say this because it's intense stuff, to potentially hear. It's not intense for me to share anymore, but my darkest time was at 16 with a suicide attempt. Thankfully, that attempt obviously was not successful, but it was one of the wake up calls in my life. So I left home, got a GED, did not finish high school. I was deeply entrenched, had an eating disorder and then food addiction. So I had to really heal my body. I had to heal from the emotional trauma, which was part of my temper, actually. It took some years. So my path is what we said earlier has really been unique. I now have 2 master's degrees. I had a career in public health. Then I got the wake up call at 39 at a retreat. You need to be a therapist. So again, I listened to my intuition. I had no idea how I was going to do that. I was raising children. I was going to go get more education. Like, this is crazy. And then I did it. And now it's over almost 25 years ago. It changed my life. Um, so I would offer all of that, and that our own path is truly our own, and it can be, deeply about deep struggle for sure, and was for me. But it's almost because of that deep struggle that, I wouldn't have the life I have now, and love it and feel so grateful for it without that. So don't give up hope is a message I tell that 16-year-old that used to be me, like, sweetheart, you don't even know what's ahead of you. This is just a really intense time. Hang in there. Um, I encourage people to find a way to do personal work. If therapy's not it, that's okay. Podcasts, books, coaches. I mean, clinical work, you can't, no one, people that do clinical work need to be clinically trained. So there's a piece of the puzzle for that. But start wherever you are. Start somewhere. Probably this is it for people as a great starting place. Just starting to think about their relationship to themselves, what's actually happening. And from that place, it can move forward.
What a great, perfect message, because we all can find something to support us, whether it's a friend who will
Mhm.
be our accountability partner and is
Yeah.
willing to do it with us, or a spouse, or a therapist, whatever step it is, coaching. I have that BFF coaching network. All the coaches that have been on this show that have chosen to are out there listed. You can go listen to their podcast, and you can get a feel for the person before you even contact them. And that's what I think is so fun, because we're all here. Not, I can't help everybody. Catherine can't help everybody. We're all, we all have a place and we all have someone to help us. And so
Mhm.
it's just beautiful. And it's like, just get off on this tangent because I think it's so great to have a place where we can meet with friends.
That's
And it's
yeah.
like we're just here, a trusted network.
Well, thank you. And this is really truly not about book promotion. I wrote a book 5 years ago about living in the flow of wakefulness, touching on many of these aspects. And I actually wrote it for my kids because I can't be my kids' therapist. And I felt like I've had a lot of teachers, spiritual teachers, therapists, just people along the way. And I wanted to give the world and mainly my children kind of my best shot at wakefulness, like actually embodying that and living that. So that is available to people. Like everything else you said and other inputs in a way on this path of living as our most wakeful self. And I want to thank you so much, Laura, for having me on the show. It's been so lovely.
I've loved talking with you. It's so much fun. So,
Thank
well,
you.
yeah, you're welcome. Let's do it again.
Okay, I love that. I love that.
All right. Thank you so much, Catherine, for joining me and sharing with our friend. Friend, I am not a licensed medical, mental professional, just here for entertainment, reaching out to do my best at helping you have a smooth path to where you're going. So stay tuned for the next episode.
Are you tired of waking up exhausted? You are not alone. If you're looking to take your life back, let's start with the simple step of adjusting your self-talk. Stay tuned for the next episode with your host, Laura Jane. Remember to follow the show so you don't miss the next simple step that you can use to feel more confident. And please leave an honest review.